Good evening once again. It's good to be here with all of you for this class. So I'm guessing you can see my screen. Our topic for tonight is introduction to tables. We are going to be talking about tables. So what are tables, or what is a table? Of course, this is a table, but since we are not carpenters, we are developers, we are not going to be talking about this kind of table. Instead, we are going to be talking about data tables that we build with HTML and style with CSS. So we're going to be talking about data tables. And here is a little definition. A table is a representation of data arranged in rows and columns. Tables are used to present data or information in a neat way. We are talking about something like this. This qualifies as a table, a data table. And you notice the data on it is presented in columns and rows. Here are other examples of tables. These ones are more colorful. The styling is more advanced, but they are all still the same thing. You'll also notice that they all have rows and columns. So why is there a need to present data using tables? Of course, if you are, as a developer, if you are given a Figma file that has a table for you to code. You have no choice, you have to code it. So that is a reason. But then tables help to organize and present data in a way that is easy to read and understand. So that is why tables are used on web pages, on documents, and other places. They help to organize and present data in such a way that it is easy for people to read it, to analyze it, and to understand it, and then make use of the information. Without tables, data might not be easy to understand, especially when there are lots of data. So tables are very useful in presenting data in a way that is easy to read and to understand. We've talked about rows and columns a few times. These are important parts of a table. The row is the section of the table that goes from left to right. And the first row is a special row. It's called the header row or the header. It acts as a title for the type of information in each column. So what we're saying is if you look at this table here, this table, the first row has a different color. It is highlighted. That's because it's a special row and it acts as a title for the type of information in each column. So that means that if this first column, for example, is going to contain names of people, then you will expect to find name written at the top of the column. If the next, if this second column is going to contain, let's say, prices, you're going to find prices. You expect to find prices written at the top of the column, at the start of the column. So this first row is always a special row and it is called the header. Then the column is a section of the table that goes from top to bottom. As you can see, this table has one, two, three, four, five columns. And of course, the cell is the section or the part of the table that contains the values or the data. Is the smallest unit, the smallest part of the table. And a little memory aid because sometimes you might confuse the row and the column. So to tell them apart, you can think of the column as a pillar, something that is standing like a pillar. So that could serve as a little memory aid to help us to be able to tell apart the row from the column and not get the two of them mixed up. In order for us to code or to build our tables using HTML, we make use of tags. I'm sure all of us are familiar with tags. There are several tags that are necessary that we use to build our tables. This list here is not a complete list, it's not an exhaustive list. There are other tags, but these are the most important tags you will need to build your table. Let's talk about them one by one. The first tag is the table tag. You start with the table tag. You wrap the entire table around the table tag. Then this is the T head tag, table head tag. This groups the header content in a table. Remember, we say the first row is the header. So you are going to wrap your header around the T head tag. Then the T body tag groups the body content in a table. So the rest of the table, after the header, the rest of the table will be wrapped around the T body tag. Then the T foot, some tables have a footer, which normally will be the last row of the table. So if your table has a footer, you are going to wrap the content of the footer in the T foot tag. Then we have the TR tag. TR stands for table row. This is used to create the rows. Then you have the TH tag. This is used to create the cells. We say the cells are the smallest units, the smallest parts that contains the values or the actual data. So you use the TH, table header stands for table header. Use the TH tag to create the cells in the table. But it refers to the cells in the header or in the header section of the table. While the TD tag is used to create the cells in the rest of the table. So once you are done creating the cells with TH, the cells in the header section, the remaining table, the cells in the remaining table, you are going to use the TD tag to create them. I know all of this might seem a little bit confusing, but of course, when you start using them, when you start to practice, working with these tags, then I'm sure it will be much easier for you to understand. Of course, you do not have to memorize all of this, but it's important for you to know their functions. So, here is my suggestion for building a HTML table. By the time you start building tables, you might prefer a different formula, a different method, but this is what I would recommend that you do for now. The first step is it's important for you to have a sketch, or if you have been provided with a drawing, a Figma drawing, then that's fine. But if there is no drawing, then you should have like a sketch, perhaps with a pen and paper, so you can have an idea of what the table looks like and it will be easier for you to build the table. Then, of course, when you start the actual coding, the first thing to do, that's step two, is to add the HTML table tag. And then, of course, the next thing is to add the T head, the T body, and the T foot tags. That's the table header, the table body, and the table foot tags. So that's the next step. And then the last step is you build the table row by row. So you don't build column by column, you build row by row. You take the first row, you build it, you go to the next row, you build it, you go to the next row until you get to the last row. So you build the table row by row, and to do that, you first of all create the row with your TR tag, and then you now start to add the data with either TH if it's for the header section or TD for the body for the rest of the table. So please keep in mind that all the tags are the regular HTML tags that have the opening and the closing parts. They are not self-closing tags, as you will see when we start to make use of them in the practical section. We are going to build this very simple looking table together for practice. You can think of this as uh, a data or containing the names of the students, in this program. Of course, this is not a complete list, and of course, this is fictional, but this is just to help us to drive the point home, to have something to practice so we can really see how it is done. So this table has four columns and it has like five rows. So this is what we are going to build together. So let's start. Already I have created an index.html file. I've already dropped the um, boilerplates. I think it's called boilerplates, and I also, okay. Let me. This is what it looks like right now. This is what it looks like. So I haven't done much. Just this H1 um, element that is there right now. So we're going to build our table under this H1 element, under this student data, and this is our sketch. Consider this as our sketch or our Figma drawing. This is what we want to build together. I've also created a style.css file and I've done some basic styling, basically for the font, so the font can look a bit nice. And I also centered the table. But so we're going to style the table together as we build it. So remember the steps that I outlined. The first step is to have a sketch. We already have a sketch. And then after that, the next step is to start with the table tag. So we're going to do, I hope you can see uh, my code as I type. So we're going to start with the table tag. Notice that it's contained within the body tags, the body tags of the index.html file, which is where it should be, of course. So I'll just go ahead and say table. So VS Code helps us to complete it, makes our work easier. So since the entire table is going to be contained within the table tag, so the next three tags will be inside the table tag. And if you remember, the next step is to write the T head, the T body, and the T foot tags. So let's do that. The T head, then the T body, and the T foot. So we're making progress. You can see at this point, nothing is even appearing on our output on the live server. There's nothing there. Even though we have created our table, we have also created the header section, we've created the body section and the footer section, but nothing is showing up because we've not started to enter the values. So the next step is to build the table row by row. And as you can see from the drawing, the first row is the header row. So let's do that. Let's create the first row. And since it's the header row, we're going to create it inside the T head tag, within the T head tag. So we'll come here and we say TR, table row. So we have created the first row here. Still, nothing is showing up on our output because there is no value entered yet. So after creating the row, the next thing is to create the cells and type in the values within those cells. So to do that, we will use th, the th tag, table head. So the first cell in the header is this hash sign or this pound sign. So I'll just go ahead and type it in. So now you can see something is starting to appear. Then the next cell is name, th. The next one is track, th. And the last one is location, th. So now we've got the first row, which is our header row. So we're going to the next row, which is student number one. So we are not going to create it inside the T head. We're not going to create it inside the T head because it's not part of the header, it's part of the body. So we'll leave the header. Let me just put a little space so it is more readable. So we'll come to the body and then we'll create that row there, TR. And then we'll start to create the cells one by one. And to do that, this time we're going to use TD, table data. And then we'll say 1. Then we'll come to the next cell, TD, then the name. Then the next cell, TD, Bev. And then the last cell on that row, TD, Lagos. So we can see that we're making progress and we are getting our output out correctly. So we've created the first row in the body section of the table. So let me go ahead and create the second row. I will just copy and paste, it's faster. The reason why I'm adding the spaces is just to make it more readable. It's not a requirement. So I'll just change the values to, change this one to Ben. I'm sorry I didn't introduce myself. My name is Ben. And then we'll change the location here. Then I copy and paste for the third student data. I change this to number 3, change the name, change the track and the location. And then the last one, number 4, the name is different and the location. So you can see we have the entire table. We have the data for the entire table. And I think this is correct. So what remains is the styling. And the first thing we want to do to style it is to create the border. And of course, you're already familiar with CSS styling. You first of all target the element you want to style, and then you write the property, the CSS property. So we want to put a border around the entire table. So we say table, then border, one pix, solid, black. You can see the table has got a border around it, but we want the border to be wrapped to be everywhere. We want the border everywhere. So we need to target all the cells in the table, both the the header the cells in the header section and the cells in the body section. So we'll come here and we'll say TH and TD. So that applies the styling to the entire table, to all the cells in the table. But we'll notice that the lines do not look like this. And that's because we need to apply another CSS property called border collapse. Border collapse. Then we'll choose collapse. So that takes care of that. The next thing is the whole thing is cramped. So we need to add padding to the cells. So we say padding. Let's say 10 pixels for top and bottom and 20 pixels for left and right. So notice that this looks very much like our drawing, our Figma drawing. So the next thing is the colors. The the header has a different color. So let's target the header and style it. PH, table header, background color. This is dark cyan, so that's fine. But then the text is not black. The text ought to be white for better contrast. So we say color white. That's fine. So the final step is to apply the color to the body section of the table. Now you could choose to go back to your index.html and then target the rows that you want to color, that you want to style, and like assign a class to them and just go ahead and style. But there is a better way to do it. If you have a very long table, that might be very difficult to do, it might be time consuming. There's a better way to do it. There is a CSS um, property that is called, it's actually, they call it a pseudo class selector. So it's used to target the section of the table that you want to style and just do it automatically. Just use one line of code to style all the different rows in that section that you want to style. So this is it. This is the CSS property or class selector. It's here. Of course, you don't have to memorize it, and being aware of it, if you need it, you can just Google it and make use of it. So we are targeting the T body, and that's another reason why it's good for us to define the T body so that we can target it when styling. So we target the T body and we say we want to apply the styling to the row TR, table row, and we want to do it for the nth child. Of course, this nth child is a little bit advanced. In fact, it's a little bit confusing. The definition for nth child that I got online says the nth child is a CSS pseudo class selector that allows you to select elements based on their index or source order inside their content. That's a little bit confusing. So it's important to just know what it does. And it's not necessary to memorize this definition. So what it does basically, it applies the styling to the particular row that you specify. So let's just go ahead and apply the styling that we want and see the effects. So let's take background color and then we'll go for cyan. So that gives us just what we want. Notice that even is selected here as perhaps we could call it an attribute. If we change this to odd, then it starts from the first row in the body section, which is an odd number, and then it ties every odd row in the table. But if we go back to even, then it starts from the second row, which is an even number, and then it ties every even number in the table. So why this is very nice is because if the table is very long, it will just continue to apply the styling to all the even rows in the table. Let's illustrate this quickly. Let's say we copy and paste another row to the table. Let's add like three more. So you see it keeps styling all the even rows. Every other row, it styles all the even rows. And if we change it to odd, same thing happens. So let's leave it at even and let's remove the extra rows that we added. So that's how to create a HTML table. So just to quickly recap the steps, here are the steps again. So you you get your sketch, or if you have a drawing, then you don't need a sketch. So the first thing to do is to add the HTML table tag. Then after that, you add the T head, the T body, and the T foot tags. And then you start to build the table row by row. First, you create the row, and then you add the data. So that's the end of the class. The next section will be for questions.